Hi, you can hear me, yeah? Hi,
Yeah,
Anais.
good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so let's look at your screen, at your paper on the screen share. And so we go here. And so here's the paper. And let me save it again, just in case we make some more changes. And I'll, if we do make some more changes, I'll send them to you, obviously. And so like that, like there. Okay, so you write, yeah, I mean, the biggest issue is, just so I don't forget to mention it, of course, is that it's good to see the page numbers. I know,
Yeah.
you might have some experience, more experience writing, that typically, according officially to the formal rules of academic writing, you don't have to give a page number if you do not quote text. If you quote text, you have to provide the page number. But I would, for purposes of teaching the class, so to make sure that teaching students how to write in academic style, the reason I want the page numbers for the specific page number, and not just like a grade. Don't say like page 260 to 265. Give me the specific page 261,
Okay.
or if it goes over to 62, page 261, 62. The reason I want that is because I want students to get into the habit of checking their sources and making sure that the idea they have is really what they think they remember reading in that chapter of the Hook textbook. Because I think I remember, oh yeah, I read that in a book. I state that nation states are more prone to engage in irredentism. And I might remember reading that in that book, and then I go check that book, and it's not there, or I didn't quite remember it correctly. So that's why I'm asking the students to put the specific page numbers in for these assignments, because it's part of a training in terms of being careful about providing evidence for any claim that we make. I say we because I have to write papers too. I'm writing papers all the time, and I have to get them evaluated, and they're graded by other people, and it's so that's why I keep wanting to say I want the page number, the specific page number, and also any claim that I make, and same is true, of course, with your work. I have to back up with evidence, and particularly evidence from a scholarly source. So, like for example, what's a scholarly source? I think I showed this in class once before, right? Like if I go here and just to share the screen again to show the website. This is one of the many databases that's available, at libraries. I'm sure Swiss libraries, academic libraries have ProQuest, and there are many. I mean, there are other many databases. You change databases, you can see the different databases. Well, these are all off of a ProQuest, but there are many others. But I like using this one because it's big, and so, like, for example, so look, if we go back to your paper here and look at it, and we see it says here, United States of America's Cold War happened to decide who would lead the world's economy between capitalism and communism. And yeah, okay, that's from chapter 2. Of course, you want to make sure you're using site information from at least, 3 different chapters, from chapters, 7 through 12, I think is what I asked. Okay. Nowadays, the dilemma is once again put on the table, with China competing against the United States in various sectors such as manufacturing. Furthermore, as both have the nuclear weapon and different national political system, the fight for domination would happen through another Cold War. So, I mean, is China capitalist?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, but there's different forms of capitalism, and it's not just an issue with your paper. It's an issue I have with the general way that the media and particularly the media talks about what capitalism is, because capitalism, I think, what is the critical aspect of capitalism? Private property. The people can own private property and accumulate private property, including wealth in the form of currency, money, finances, capital in the form of finances. And but all countries, it seems to me, all states seem to reserve the right to regulate what people can do with their so-called private property in certain situations. So, like during wartime, the United States would make certain, like what happened, for example, with the COVID-19 pandemic. The Trump administration used a law called the National Defense Act, or the Korea Defense Act from 1950 that was passed at the beginning of the Korean War that allowed the US government to tell corporations that they had to supply certain products to the US government now, and they didn't have any choice in the matter. So there you see the US government intervening because of national security crisis in 1950, and then again in 2020, claiming that there was a national security crisis and corporations therefore have to devote their factories to building. I think they ordered General Motors to build ventilators. You know, those things that they put the tubes in people's chests so they can breathe if they're critically ill. There was a shortage of them. So, you know, private property is this thing that we have as a concept. It seems like capitalism is based upon this concept, or not this concept, this belief that there is this thing that we all accept called property, private property. This is mine, what you got is yours, and we believe in that.
Mhm.
And belief is an interesting thing because a belief exists only up here, just like Switzerland or Korea or United States or China exist only up here. So we believe in that, we believe in private property that exists. And in socialism, at least as we have seen in the Soviet Union, because I'm not talking about socialism in Switzerland or Western Europe, but Switzerland as it existed in the Soviet Union was they denied the legitimacy of private property. They didn't believe in it. At least the government did not believe in it. Officially, the government did not believe in private property. Now, people still had private property. I mean, even under Soviet communism, right? If I purchased something in a store, even if it's a communist-led store with my communist wages from my communist job, you know, working in a socialist communist factory, and I purchase something that's mine. Right? You can't take it from me because it's mine. I bought it. But as an organizing principle of the economy, they didn't believe in private property. They would change. So beginning, I don't really know when. It might have been in the 1970s or 1980s. They started to allow. Well, I don't even know if they. Yeah, I mean, I think that. Well, you know, I went to the Soviet Union in 1985, and I went to the Moscow. I studied there for a few months, and I went to Moscow market where they sold the products from farmers' own individual garden plots that they grew, you know, onions or peppers or whatever, and they could bring them and sell them for whatever price I think they wanted at that market. And of course, people needed it because that's where they really got their supplies, because you couldn't trust the communist-owned stores to provide things what you needed, particularly as the economic situation suddenly got worse and worse and worse. Now, I'm trying to recall if those farmers, they typically worked on collective farms, you know, these state-owned big agricultural enterprises that were really inefficient. But then each of the farmers also had their own home where they lived somewhere. They live in a home, and they had a plot of land, and they could grow whatever they wanted on that little plot of land. And I don't know if they actually own that land, or the government said, well, technically you have it, but it's not, you don't technically own it. You don't really own it, but you have it. It's yours. You can use it. You know, because I think that's like the situation that exists in China today. Like China, you know, they have a lot of economic problems, and one of the problems is their agricultural sector is still not very efficient. It's not very efficient because technically you're not allowed to own land in China. You can lease it, I think, for 99 years or something like that. You know, but you still do not technically own land in China, even as a farmer. So I guess the reason I'm talking like this is because I use these meetings to try to think through ideas that are just in my head, and I'm not really clear what my problem is. Now I think that capitalism is the belief in private property. And a belief means we accept it and that we acknowledge it. And in socialism, at least in Soviet communism, denied the concept of private property. And in China, even though peasants might not technically be able to own and sell land, they still, you can own and sell other things. You can own apartments, you can own cars, you can own factories, you can own things, if not lands. Land is sensitive because of the Chinese Revolution happening when that country was still 80, 90% people living in as farmers, 70 years ago. And so that's, thank you. Because now because I'm thinking, but it's still, even though we allow people to own property, the state will still intervene, whether it be in Switzerland or United States or China or England, or they will intervene at times to limit and regulate what private property owners can do with their private property, right? I can't use I can't engage in legal activities, of course, but I might have to, I can't, I just imagine, a law, we do it all the time, and the situation changes depending upon the context, and so, but you think that belief in the existence of private property is one major factor because it's something that the Chinese apparently do accept, that people can own. I think you can own it. You can own an apartment. You can own a car. You can own land. Well, not land. You can own buildings on the land. You can own that will be one factor that, basically the fact that both the United States and China are committed to capitalism. Even if because there's all sorts of discussion about China, how Xi Jinping and the Chinese state, in this increasingly authoritarian political system in China under Xi Jinping, moving towards totalitarianism, that he's restricting and controlling and constraining and reasserting control over private sector companies like Alibaba, Jack Ma's big, and they're really constraining and going after these companies and stopping them from doing certain things they wanted to do. But that doesn't mean they're becoming, like Soviet communists. It means that they're regulating their corporations more closely. They're saying no DD, you cannot, because that's their like ride hailing service, like Lyft or Uber in the West. No, you can't gather all of the data you want. You cannot sell shares in Didi, the Chinese Uber, in the American stock market, because we don't want information about China going to the United States. Because whenever you get on those those ride hail services or any kind of digital service, they're gathering data about you and me when we use those services. What we want, what our preferences is, and they're afraid that the Americans are going to somehow get that data, and they don't want the Americans to have that data about the Chinese consumers. But that's not a rejection of capitalism. That's just regulation for national security purposes, as they define what national security purposes means. And US does it too, right? I mean, we have seen that containing China does not work in the United States' favor. However, it is one of the commonly used strategies to prove their supremacy, as they did with regard to the Soviet Union. Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting point. Okay, so it's one. Yeah, I mean, so again, this is your paper. I understand your paper is a first draft. It's a first draft, and and so I write papers the same way you're doing. Like I write down my ideas, and then I polish them up, try to make them more clear, keep my sentences short, use grammar and concise scholarly writing as a way by which to make me clarify my points. And then I start looking for evidence to support my ideas. And if I can't find evidence, I have to change my ideas, or I have to modify them and develop them and refine them in response to my search for scholarly evidence that I find to be scholarly websites that I was mentioning, right? Like this one.
Okay.
And that's typically what happens. I get some great idea, and then I read somebody who wrote something that's on that topic, and then I cite that source, but then I see I might have to change or refine or develop my source a little bit more closely as a consequence of reading that article or whatever that I found on that scholarly database. And I think I showed this in class already. Like, for example, if we're going to do a search, like for example, if we do, I think you can see this, right? Make sure you can see because I don't know if this is always working, but like, you do full text and you go here and say China and full text, capitalism and full text, property and in the title, let's look up, put Cold War in the title and see what comes up. Probably nothing because it's 65 results. And you can see, I clicked here, peer review. That means it's scholarly source. That means it's to get something published in a peer reviewed journal means two academic people, they review the submitted article and decide if it's good. And it's called a double-blind procedure because my name is removed from my article. If I submit an article, my name is removed and it's sent to somebody who doesn't know me. I could be Henry Kissinger. I could be Vladimir Putin. They don't know because my name is removed and I don't know who they are. So because we're anonymous, in other words, we're supposed to be more honest. So you can see that's 65. I didn't expect to get 65 results. Challenging Eurocentric Cold War view of China in the making of a post-Tiananmen intellectual field. And it's that's an old article. And it's written by a Chinese guy with a Chinese name. So I don't know what to make of that. But that, this is after the 12 years after the Tiananmen Square massacre that killed hundreds, if not thousands of students. So socialist remaining future of Cold War analysis, thinking about the post, there's a lot of stuff here. I have to check this out. Because I'm thinking about these topics. What does capitalism mean? When there's so many different forms of capitalism, there's Chinese, there's American, there's German, there's, I don't know enough about Switzerland, or French or Italian or even Russian. I mean, even Russia today, they accept capitalism. It's just that there's corruption is so terribly bad that basically they extort people without, that's interesting. What is corruption? Because this is another important topic today that you see a lot about. And I'm thinking about it as well. Corruption is supposed to when you do something for private interest against the public good, whatever that abstract notion means. So, but in Russia is supposed to be incredibly corrupt, but it's dominated by the same people that started their careers before the Soviet Union ended. So like the secret police people, they're called the Siloviki. It's a Russian term for the force guys, the people that all started their careers in the police in the Soviet times, like Vladimir Putin. He was a KGB colonel in East Germany. And now they dominate the political system, if not the economic system, and they use their political power to shape and control the economic system. But a lot of people are also doing it the political people want to get rich, even while they're not businessmen. So they make these economic people, these oligarchs, give them money rather than give it to the state, rather than give it to them through their paycheck, because their paycheck is probably ludicrous. It's because the paycheck of a policeman under I don't know what they've done in 30 years. But when I was, in Bulgaria, that was one of the sources of the corruption was that they inherited communism, and then the communist system collapsed. But under communism, teachers, professors, doctors, nurses, they were all state employees, right? They were employees of the state. And so they got paychecks that were ridiculous. I mean, they were communist era paychecks. Now communism is finished. And these doctors and teachers and professors, they're still state employees, and there was terrible economic problems, and they were making no money. They were really important jobs, like policemen, teachers, professors, but they were state employees. So they hadn't reformed the system. They had to adopt all of these laws as part of joining the European Union, but that took time and to implement those laws. But they didn't make any money. So you couldn't survive in Bulgaria by following the law. You couldn't after 1989. Anybody who followed the law would not live because the laws were ridiculous because they were inherited from communism. So if I'm a college professor and I say, well, okay, I'm going to get paid some ridiculous amount of money to lecture, but I'm not going to take it too seriously because it's a ridiculous paycheck. But if you want to pass your college entrance exams, you're going to have to pay me money to tutor you as a private tutor. And we saw that all the time in Bulgaria. Is that corruption? I don't take my job seriously, but my private job where I make you tutor, where I make you pay for me as a tutor, a real salary. Is that corruption? And it got to be corrupt. I mean, because it was technically against, or it might be technically against the law until the laws got around to being changed. I remember it was just so blatant. Because it was really kind of sad because Bulgarians are really educated and cultured people. They really emphasize education, but like the police would pull people over for driving, and they would just expect for speeding or some supposed traffic violation. And I can understand Bulgarian, and I would hear them talk to the taxi driver. Okay, give me some money, because the police made no money. So they would just make you would have to bribe them, because that's the only way they could make a decent income. They did it to me. They did it to my taxi drivers when I was going to the airport. And they would be kind of embarrassed, and we all know why they were doing it. It was just weird, So what is corruption? And corruption, it seems to come, is partly determined by the official ideology of the authorities that rule a polity, a political system, whether it be a liberal democratic polity or totalitarian polity or whatever. Like, for example, it's or traditional conservative feudal polity. Like in feudalism, like 500 years ago in Switzerland, or today in Saudi Arabia, of course you're supposed to give gifts to your boss. That it's just considered, because the boss expects a gift, and I give a gift, and is that corruption if everybody expects it? Under these feudal, aristocratic, traditional king type regimes, like in Saudi Arabia or in the United Arab Emirates, how can that be corruption if that's just the way things have always been done?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So just to go on here. So again, so then of course, the government decided we're going to end corruption. It was like that way here. I've seen that here in Korea. Like, for example, students would give me gifts. One student gave me some nice gifts, and he screwed up the midterm because he didn't use and cite sources from at least 3 different chapters, and I gave him a C+, and he was so furious and shocked. After he gave me a bottle of whiskey, I gave him a C+ on a test. Like, why would I do that? I thought we were buddies. And then, like, you don't remember this, you might not remember this. This country responds to, like, typically most countries respond to crises or disasters. So a few years ago, there was a ship that sank and killed like 300 people, and 200 of them were kids, 15, 16-year-old children. The Seawall ferry disaster. And how that happened involved just one incredible amalgamation of incompetent stupidity on the part of the Coast Guard, the ferry crew, the dock workers, the regulators, all just completely incompetent, and basically because of corruption. They had the rules, but nobody was following the rules in terms of how you hire people, how you're supposed to do things. And so after that, and people are still shocked about that. All these little kids drown in this ridiculous episode, tragically ridiculous episode. They passed legislation, and then there were rules came down that I may not spend, or students may not spend more than something like 30,000 won on meals for me, and I might not spend more than up to 30 or 50,000 won on meals and gifts for students, to try to deal with this problem of corruption, in this case in academia. Like, if a student cannot buy me a dinner, and if they do, I have to report it. And over 50,000, I think it's 50,000 won. It might be less. So if students buy me a nice meal, or and it costs a lot of money, I have to report that to the university. And so that's to deal with this problem of people trying to get better grades by bribing their professors. Right. So again, we're running kind of short on time here. So investors who put money on American companies started to moving their investments to abroad companies which impact the impact. Okay, anytime you make a claim, you have to support it with evidence. And be careful whenever you make broad general claims. I mean, I don't remember this. I don't recall investors in the U.S. stock moving their investments out of the U.S. stock market in response to these Trump tariffs. I mean, you say when Donald Trump put tariffs on Chinese imports, you say that investors began moving investments out of the U.S. I don't remember that. They started moving more and more of their investments from China to Vietnam to supply the U.S. market. And Vietnam is one of the, I remember that. But again, anytime you make a claim, you got to find some evidence. If not a scholarly source, like a newspaper report, also like from a good newspaper, they call newspapers of record. And so, like, of course, I want to help you polish your wonderful English to make it, because, so I often make suggestions about how to rephrase something, and I make 2 suggestions, and it's up to you to choose one or do whatever you want. You can choose one or throw out the other or do something else. Because if I just tell you how I would write it, you're not going to learn very much. It's better if you think about it and choose it. But, so either one is okay. You can say another reason the United States might fall into or start a Cold War. A Cold War state like against China is that so which do you prefer, fall into or start?
Well, fall into seems like more new to me, so fall into.
Okay, so I'll just highlight that, and you can let you choose whatever you want to do, and fix up, clean it up, because if you have to clean it up, you're probably going to learn more. So whenever you quote text, and you're quoting text here, then you do definitely have to provide the source and the page number for that quotation, this quoted text here.
Okay.
Okay. So do you have any questions?
No, it's okay. Like you say, I think I should develop some points and find like background. So.
Okay. Yeah, and there's that word limit, which doesn't include the citations here. So I just use the here you can see the words highlighted and it says include footnotes, and then click on that and you get the number 603. I don't know if that includes my comments. I don't think it does. Well, maybe it does. Yeah, include my comments. So that 603 number includes all my points here. So it's important to mention that overseas countries supporting the United States decreased when they went to war in Middle East countries. So use page number. Yeah, did that influence what the U.S. does? I mean, that's a big topic. I'm surprised how even on political science people, they fight about just how much public opinion survey information impacts government foreign policy. I mean, I remember bringing this up at a conference a couple of years ago in San Francisco, and I mentioned, and one of the professors on that panel was the teacher. He had Stephen Hook as his student, and he was, oh yeah, like they got all sensitive, like, yeah, yes, public opinion is really important in shaping the United States foreign policy, because I guess it's a debate. It's still a debate. How much it is, if George Bush or Donald Trump or Joe Biden really want to do something, and that point's made in the Hook textbook, right? Stephen Hook references Seymour Martin Lipset, who says, because most Americans don't care too much about foreign affairs except during a crisis, they a good American leader, as a politician, as a good politician, should be able to get what he or she wants to do done in foreign policy, or adopt a policy that he or she wants as president. And their public opinion approval ratings or disapproval ratings on that issue show how good they are as politicians, how skillful they are as professional politicians. Why? Because most Americans, they are willing to be. There's always a great deal of Americans who are willing to be persuaded by their president because they don't follow foreign affairs very closely. so I think that's one of the reasons why some people think that foreign public opinion surveys are not really that big of an impact on foreign policy. That states do what they think their leaders think they need to do or they must do in response to international pressures and domestic needs. And if they really, if they encounter domestic opposition, they find a way to get around it if they have the capacity, political capacity to get around it. But that statement from Seymour Martin Lipset, that people still remember that, and because it came up even at that conference 2 years ago. I mean, wow, pretty bold statement. Yeah, so I mean, of course, I think it's and that's that means you need to provide the page numbers. You need to but that's an important point. It's an important point today, right now. For example, is it inevitable that U.S. and China are going to be in conflict? And a realist would say, yeah, because they no longer have a common enemy, the Soviet Union. Just like the United States cooperated with the Soviet Union during World War II against Germany. And once Germany disappeared, Hitler was defeated. Of course, the United States and Soviet Union got into conflict. So of course, the United States and China are now in conflict. As China got more and more powerful, it wants more and more influence. And since America dominates the minds and thinking of people around the world as a form as the manifestation of its influence, China once more is going to try to reduce American influence, and the Americans are going to resist. And it doesn't really ultimately matter whether China is a monarchy, a communist dictatorship, a democracy. Just like, for example, Germany and the United Kingdom at the end of the 19th century, they weren't ideologically that different. They're both European Christian countries with monarchies, but elected representatives, elected parliaments, and they still got involved in intense conflicts because Germany was rising. And so they would say, so that's why I think, political system is not unimportant, but realists think it's really not primarily important. Liberals would say, no, it's more important than that, that if China democratized, US and China would get along better. And constructivists would say, well, there's more capacity for leadership to adopt creative foreign policies that are cooperative or conflictive based upon their interests, including their power interests. Okay, so I'll send this to you. Do you have any questions?
It's okay.
Okay, so let me send that to you and go like this, reply right here. And I will send you the link to the recording as well once I upload it to YouTube, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, bye.